The doctor turned off the ultrasound screen, looked me in the eyes, and said, "I know what your husband did, and I have proof." That one sentence destroyed my entire marriage and exposed a $50,000 plot to frame me for cheating with our own IVF baby. Stay till the very end, because the way karma caught up to him, absolutely devastating. Subscribe now if you believe the truth always wins.
What would you do if you discovered the man sleeping next to you every night had spent $50,000 plotting to destroy your life? I'm about to tell you exactly what I did, and trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. My name is Daphne Wilson, and this is the story of how my perfect marriage turned into the most elaborate con I never saw coming. But here's the thing about trying to destroy a Wilson woman. We don't just survive, we make sure you regret ever trying. Picture this. I'm sitting in a doctor's office, 4 months pregnant, waiting for a routine ultrasound. My usual doctor was on vacation, so I was seeing Dr. Claire Brennan instead. Everything seemed normal until she opened my file, saw my husband's name, and her hands started trembling. She turned off the ultrasound monitor completely and said words that shattered my world. "I know what your husband did, and I have proof." Let me back up, because you need to understand how I ended up in that moment, learning that my entire life was built on lies. I'm 32, work as a marketing director in Connecticut, and I inherited my grandmother's estate when she passed 5 years ago. $2.3 million in a trust fund, plus the historic Wilson family home where 5 generations of women had lived and raised their children. I never flaunted it, still drove my 10-year-old Subaru, bought coffee at the same place every morning. The inheritance was security, not identity. But apparently, it made me a target. I met Grant Mercer 4 years ago at my family's annual charity gala. I was trying to escape a conversation with yet another man who'd asked about my financial situation within 3 minutes of meeting me when Grant appeared. Tall, dark hair, easy smile. He asked what I was drinking, made jokes about the terrible jazz band, and didn't mention money once. He claimed to be just a financial advisor who'd gotten a last-minute invitation from a colleague. Said he had no idea who the Wilson family was. Looking back, that should have been red flag number 1. A financial advisor who doesn't research the host family of a major charity event? That's like a chef showing up to a cooking competition saying they had no idea they'd be making food. But I was tired of obvious gold diggers, and here was this charming man asking about my favorite books instead of my bank account. My mother, Vivian, saw through him immediately. After their first meeting, she pulled me aside and said, "That man's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something's wrong with him, Daphne. I can feel it." I told her she was being paranoid, overprotective, jealous even. We fought about Grant constantly until we basically stopped talking. 2 years of near silence between me and the woman who raised me, all because I chose to believe my husband over my own mother. Spoiler alert, Mom was right, and she's been patiently waiting to say, "I told you so." At this point, she's absolutely earned it. Grant and I got married after a year of dating. Beautiful ceremony at my grandmother's estate. He cried during his vows, tears streaming down his face as he promised to love and protect me forever. Looking back, those were probably the most honest tears he ever shed, not from joy but from relief. His long game was finally paying off. After 2 years of trying for a baby naturally, we saw a fertility specialist. The diagnosis hit like a truck. Grant had severe male factor infertility. His sperm count was almost non-existent, and what little he had barely moved, natural conception was essentially impossible. Grant seemed devastated. He cried in the car for 20 minutes, apologized over and over like it was his personal failure. I comforted him, told him we'd figure it out together. What I didn't know was that Grant wasn't crying from grief. He was crying because his plan had just gotten significantly more complicated. All that emotion was him recalculating, not mourning. We decided on IVF with a specialized procedure where doctors inject a single sperm directly into an egg. Grant insisted on researching clinics himself, found one he said was perfect, handled all the paperwork. At the time, I thought he was being supportive because I was emotionally drained. I had no idea he was setting up the most elaborate trap I'd ever seen. The first cycle failed, devastating. I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. Grant held me, whispered encouragement, promised we'd try again. The second cycle, 7 months ago, worked. Positive pregnancy test. 2 pink lines that changed everything. I cried happy tears while Grant held me close, already talking about nursery colors and baby names. Then casually, he mentioned I should update my will now that we were becoming a family. I thought it was sweet, practical, the kind of thing a good husband thinks about. I had no idea he was already counting my grandmother's money as his own. Everything seemed perfect until 4 months into my pregnancy when something shifted. Small things at first. Grant started keeping his phone face down. New passwords I didn't know. He'd step outside to take calls, claiming they were work-related. Restructuring client portfolios at 11 p.m. on a Saturday? Unless Grant had secret clients in Tokyo, something else was going on. The late nights at the office multiplied. 3, sometimes 4 times a week. He wouldn't come home until midnight. I found receipts for expensive dinners for 2 at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel rooms 40 minutes from our house. When I asked, Grant had smooth, practiced answers that came just a little too quickly. And when I pushed harder, his tone changed. Daphne, you're being paranoid. It's the hormones. Don't turn into one of those wives. He made me apologize for questioning him. That's how good he was at manipulation. The financial pressure intensified around the same time. Grant's requests about money became more frequent, more urgent. We should add me to your trust. What if something happens during delivery? I need access to funds for the baby. Your grandmother's house is too big anyway. We should sell it and invest the money properly. When I said no, Grant's warmth evaporated completely. He became cold, distant, started sleeping on the far edge of the bed. The arguments became more frequent, followed by days of silent treatment that lasted exactly until he got hungry. Funny how principles have time limits. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m., and Grant wasn't in bed. I found him in the kitchen, hunched over his phone, speaking in hushed tones. It's almost time. By spring, everything will be settled. When he saw me, he hung up immediately. Work emergency, he said. Go back to sleep, honey. My best friend Tara came over for lunch the following week. She watched me make excuse after excuse for Grant and finally put down her fork. When's the last time Grant was actually happy to see you? Not performing happy for other people, but genuinely happy when you walk through the door? I couldn't answer. Trust your gut, she said. Something is wrong here. That brings us back to that ultrasound appointment. Claire Brennan's younger sister Molly worked as a nurse at our fertility clinic, the same clinic Grant had so carefully chosen. Claire explained everything with steady voice, even though her hands were shaking. 3 weeks earlier, Molly had shown up at Claire's apartment close to midnight, sobbing. The guilt had been eating her alive for months. 7 months ago, she told Claire, a patient's husband had approached her. Charming, well-dressed, seemed desperate but reasonable. He said he had a special situation requiring discretion. His wife didn't know, but he was using donor sperm for their IVF cycle. Some family genetic issue he didn't want to burden her with. He'd pay well for assistance. $30,000 for a nurse making $52,000 a year, drowning in student loans. Molly helped switch the samples. Grant's sperm, which couldn't have produced a pregnancy anyway, was replaced with sperm from a paid donor. The embryologist was in on it too. Grant had approached him separately with another payment. Between them, the switch went undetected. But there was more. So much more. Claire laid out Grant's complete scheme. Phase 1. Bribe clinic staff, switch sperm samples. Complete. Phase 2. Wait for successful pregnancy. Play devoted father-to-be. Complete. Phase 3. After birth, have embryologist alter records to show our second IVF cycle failed, making it appear we conceived naturally. Phase 4. Suggest DNA test. Frame it as something sweet and sentimental. Phase 5. When DNA test proved he wasn't the biological father and medical records showed natural conception, he'd have proof I cheated. Our prenup had an infidelity clause. If I supposedly cheated, I'd owe him $500,000 in penalties, plus forfeit any claim to his property, plus he could sue for additional emotional damages. Grant would walk away with at least $500,000, destroy my reputation, and I'd be so devastated I wouldn't fight back effectively. Brennan pulled more documents from her folder. Molly had saved everything: original sample records showing the switch, the donor's ID number, payment records traced to accounts Grant controlled, even email communications between Grant and the embryologist. There was one more thing. Grant had $180,000 in gambling debts. He'd been gambling for years: online poker, sports betting, casino trips he'd told me were business conferences. The $50,000 he'd paid to corrupt my IVF and frame me for adultery, he'd embezzled it from his own clients. Grant wasn't just trying to steal my inheritance, he was a drowning man grabbing at anything within reach. I was supposed to be his life raft, and he was willing to destroy me completely to get it. I sat in that office for a long time, papers spread out in front of me, truth burning a hole in my chest. Shock came first, then disbelief. Then the pieces started clicking together. His tears at our wedding weren't from joy but relief. His con was finally paying off. My mother, who I'd pushed away for 2 years, had seen through him in 5 minutes. But then something else happened. Something cold settled into my stomach, sharp and focused and absolutely calm. He thought I was stupid. He'd built this scheme on the assumption I would crumble when his trap sprung. He thought I was weak, naive, an easy mark. He had no idea who he'd married. I looked at Dr. Brennan. He doesn't know that I know, right? She shook her head. I need copies of everything, and I need you to connect me with Molly directly. What are you going to do? I stood up, hand resting on my belly. My husband thinks he's been playing chess. He thinks he's 3 moves ahead. He thinks he's already won. I straightened my shoulders. He's about to find out I already flipped the board. I drove home with my face carefully neutral, just in case Grant was watching security footage. He was waiting in the kitchen with that smile that didn't reach his eyes. How was the appointment? Is the baby okay? I smiled back, hugged him, showed him the ultrasound photo. Perfect. Everything's absolutely perfect. I deserved an Oscar for that performance. I smiled at him over dinner while mentally calculating his bail amount. I asked about his day while picturing him in an orange jumpsuit. I even laughed at his terrible joke about baby names and apologized for being paranoid lately, blaming the hormones, using his own excuse against him. His whole body relaxed. He thought he was still winning. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove 2 hours to a different city. I found a private investigator named Rosalind Weaver, ex-police detective with 15 years on the force. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, smiled like a shark who'd spotted a bleeding swimmer. Your husband made a lot of mistakes, she said. Arrogant men always do. Give me 2 weeks. She had results in 10 days. Grant's gambling debts totaled $180,000 to online betting sites, underground poker games, and private lenders who get very creative when payments are late. The embezzlement was confirmed. Approximately $53,000 missing from client accounts. His bosses had no idea yet. And then there was the affair. 8 months with his assistant. Hotel rooms, romantic dinners, weekend getaways disguised as business trips. Rosalind had photos, text messages, credit card receipts. His assistant, of course it was his assistant. How completely unoriginal. This wasn't Grant's first attempt either. 5 years ago, he'd dated Caroline Ashford in Boston. Family money, trust fund, the whole package. She'd discovered financial irregularities in a joint account he'd convinced her to open, but was too embarrassed to press charges. Now she was more than willing to provide a statement. I met with Molly Brennan secretly. She looked terrible. Thin, pale, dark circles under her eyes. She started crying the moment she saw me. I'm so sorry. I knew it was wrong. But the money, and he was so convincing. I stopped her. Are you willing to testify officially? She nodded without hesitation. The hardest call was to my mother. 2 years of near silence because I'd chosen Grant over her. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Daphne? Her voice was cautious, hopeful. Mom, you were right about everything. And I'm so sorry. I braced myself for the "I told you so" she'd earned. Instead, she said, "What do you need, sweetheart?" That broke me more than anything else. The people who really love you don't need to be right, they just need you to be okay. Within 48 hours, my mother had connected me with the best divorce lawyer in Connecticut and a prosecutor who specialized in fraud cases. My lawyer was Sandra Kowalski, looked like someone's sweet grandmother but was a shark in a cardigan. She reviewed everything and smiled. Your husband is facing fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement charges. The prenup works in your favor now because he's the one who's been cheating. 6 weeks after that ultrasound appointment, I suggested to Grant that we throw a celebration, a baby moon party at my grandmother's estate. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. More witnesses to his devoted husband performance. More people who'd feel sorry for him later when his wife was exposed as a cheater. That's a wonderful idea, he said, kissing my forehead. Let me help plan everything. No. You've been working so hard with all those late nights at the office. Let me handle the party. You just show up and enjoy it. He had no idea my version of handling everything included police officers waiting in the guest house, my lawyer stationed near the bar, Derek Sykes ready to testify, and every piece of evidence organized in folders, the Wilson family estate in late spring. My grandmother's gardens in full bloom, white tents on the back lawn, champagne chilling in silver buckets, 50 guests in their Sunday best. Grant was in his absolute element, working the crowd like a politician. His hand kept finding my belly for photos, playing the devoted father-to-be. Around 3 o'clock, Grant did exactly what I knew he would. He'd been dropping hints for weeks about wanting to celebrate fatherhood with a DNA test, frame the results in the nursery. At the party, he brought it up loudly, making sure plenty of people could hear. You know what we should do, honey? Let's get one of those DNA test kits. We can frame the results for the nursery. Proof that daddy and baby are connected forever. We could even open the results right here, make it part of the celebration. Several guests made awe sounds. His mother dabbed her eyes. I pretended to hesitate. Oh, I don't know. Come on, it'll be amazing. What do you think, everyone? Instead of pulling out a DNA kit, I walked toward the small platform near the fountain and picked up the microphone. Grant smiled up at me from the crowd, already rehearsing his shocked, devastated face. Thank you all for coming today. This party is supposed to be about celebration, about family, about truth. My husband said he wanted to reveal something special today, so I'm going to help him do exactly that. His smile flickered, the first crack in his performance. I reached under the podium and pulled out a folder. 3 months ago, I learned something about my husband that changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I want to share it with all of you because Grant is right. This should be about truth. Grant's smile was frozen now. I held up the first document. These are the records from our fertility clinic, the original records before anyone had a chance to alter them. These records show that my husband bribed 2 clinic employees to switch his sperm sample with donor sperm. He paid $30,000 to a nurse, $20,000 to an embryologist, and $15,000 to Derek Sykes. I gestured toward the edge of the crowd where Derek stepped forward. To provide the sperm used to conceive my child without my knowledge or consent. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a champagne glass. My husband's plan was simple. Wait until our child was born, demand a DNA test, and when results proved he wasn't the biological father, which he already knew would happen, he would accuse me of having an affair. Our prenup has an infidelity clause. If I had supposedly cheated, I would owe him $500,000. Grant found his voice, strangled and desperate. Daphne, honey, this is insane. It's the pregnancy hormones. You're not thinking clearly. I'm not finished. My voice was ice. In addition to bribing the fertility clinic, my husband embezzled approximately $50,000 from his clients to fund this scheme. I looked at Grant's boss near the bar. His firm is now investigating. My husband also has $180,000 in gambling debts, and for the past 8 months, he's been having an affair with his assistant. I displayed the photographs. Nothing explicit, just romantic enough to leave no doubt. Grant's mother made a sound like she'd been punched. This wasn't even his first attempt. 5 years ago in Boston, he targeted another woman with family money. She's provided a statement to investigators. Grant's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and exploded on the patio. Those are lies. He stammered. She's making this up. She's mentally unstable. Grant. His own mother's voice cut through the noise, quiet but sharp. Is any of this true? He turned to face her, opened his mouth to deny everything. Nothing came out. Molly Brennan stepped forward. I'm the nurse he bribed. I have documentation of everything. I've already given my statement to police. Derek spoke up next. He paid me $15,000 and told me it was a private arrangement. I had no idea I was part of fraud until Mrs. Wilson's investigator contacted me. Then 2 police officers stepped out from the guest house, walking calmly across the lawn. Grant Mercer, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. They handcuffed him right there in front of everyone. His mother was sobbing. His father refused to look at him. As they walked him toward the police car, Grant tried one last manipulation. Daphne, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but I love you. Think about our baby, our family. I looked at the man I'd shared my life with for 3 years, the man who'd stood at an altar promising to love and protect me while calculating how much he could steal. You're absolutely right, Grant. We just worked it out. Grant was denied bail, flight risk. His affair partner resigned the morning after the party, didn't even clean out her desk. The woman from Boston came forward publicly. Grant's firm filed their own criminal charges for the missing funds. The divorce was finalized in record time. The prenup's infidelity clause worked in my favor now. He was the one who'd been unfaithful. Not that he had anything to give anyway. Every asset he claimed was either borrowed, stolen, or imaginary. The criminal case moved quickly. Molly testified. The embryologist cooperated. Derek provided his statement. The paper trail Grant thought he'd hidden wasn't hidden at all. Fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, each charge stuck. His parents stopped coming to court after the first week. Grant Mercer would spend the next several years in prison. When he got out, he'd have nothing. No money, no career, no family, no future targets who wouldn't find his criminal record with a simple search. The trap he'd built so carefully had snapped shut on his own neck. My baby was born 4 months after the party, healthy, perfect, absolutely innocent. Some people asked if I'd contact Derek, include him somehow. But Derek was a 28-year-old grad student who'd made a dumb decision for money he needed. He wasn't ready to be a father, didn't want to be, and I didn't need him to be. My child would have me, would have my mother finally back in my life, would have the entire Wilson family legacy my grandmother built over decades. I learned that family isn't about DNA or blood tests or genetic matches. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you every single day. My mother chose me when I didn't deserve it. I chose my baby when circumstances were complicated. That's what family actually means. My mother and I have lunch every week now, making up for 2 lost years. She never said I told you so. When I asked why, she smiled. Because watching you take down that man was more satisfying than any 4 words could ever be. 3 weeks after the party, I sat in my grandmother's kitchen, my kitchen now, in the house Grant had coveted so desperately. Sunlight poured through windows that had watched 4 generations of Wilson women live their lives. I made myself chamomile tea, my grandmother's recipe, her favorite brand. Outside, the gardens were in full bloom, roses my grandmother planted as a young bride, hydrangeas added when my mother was born, the lavender border I'd helped plant when I was 10. I put my hand on my belly, felt the baby move. Grant had tried to take everything from me, my money, my reputation, my future, my peace. All he actually did was show me exactly how strong I'd always been. My grandmother used to say, Wilson women don't break. We bend, we adapt, we survive. And when someone tries to burn us down, we rise from the ashes and build something better. Grant thought he'd married an easy target. He married a Wilson. And now he had plenty of time in a prison cell to think about that mistake. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for karma to arrive. I was lucky. I got to deliver mine in person, with documentation in front of 50 witnesses. And let me tell you, revenge served at the perfect temperature with all the proper evidence. It tastes absolutely delicious.